Ken throws a discus at a school meet. The first question is what is the initial height of the discus if it follows this formula, which is h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 38t plus 5. And the question is also asking after how many seconds does the discus hit the ground. So the first question, what's the initial height of the discus? Well, if height is equal to this expression, where t is equal to the time in seconds, then that means for part A, we set t equal to 0, right? So at time equals 0, that would be the initial height of the discus. And you can see here that this term is negative 16 times 0 squared. Right? 0 squared is equal to 0, and then 0 times negative 16 is 0, so this term becomes a 0. This one here is 38 times t, which is 38 times 0, and any number times 0 is also 0. So this equation becomes h is equal to 0 plus 0 plus 5. So the initial height of the discus is 5 feet. All right. Now the question is after how many seconds does the discus hit the ground? And in order to figure that out, what we need to do is solve this trinomial and figure out when is t equal to 0. When is the height equal to 0? Right. So let's go ahead and rewrite the trinomial as negative 16t squared plus 38t plus 5 is equal to height, but here instead of height I'm going to put 0 because that's what the question is asking. After how many seconds does the discus hit the ground? That's when height is equal to 0. So now this here is a factoring problem that we've been accustomed to solving in chapter 8.7, right? Disguised as a word problem. So we need to solve it. First step would be to factor out the greatest common factor in the coefficients. And after looking at them, you could see that they have no greatest common factor. So from there, we're going to do our x. And then I'm going to put a times c in the top box. So that's negative 16 times positive 5 is negative 80. And then I'm going to put my b down in the bottom box. And because I have a coefficient that's not 1 on my t squared term, I'm going to put negative 16t as the numerator over here. And I'm going to put negative 16t as the numerator on this right side, right, for the factor. So now what do? We need to figure out what two numbers multiply to negative 80 and add up to 38. Right? This one is a pretty easy one, so it's going to be 40 and 2. So I want to put 40 over here, and I want to put 2 over here. And so since we multiply them and they should multiply to negative 80, that means one of them is negative. And so which one should be negative so that when they add up to 38? So it's going to be a negative 2. Right? So 40 plus negative 2 is 38. All right, so now we can go ahead and factor our trinomial. We're going to do negative 16t plus 40, and we're going to do negative 16t minus 2 is equal to 0. All right, great. So now we're going to solve for t, right? And so we're going to find out what t is equal to when height is equal to 0. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll set each polynomial to 0, like so. And negative 16t minus 2 is equal to 0. And we're going to solve each of them separately. So we're going to subtract 40 from both sides. And we'll get negative 16t is equal to negative 40. We're going to divide by negative 16 on both sides. And we'll get t is equal to positive 2.5 seconds. On this side, we're going to add 2 to both sides, and we'll get negative 16t is equal to 2. We're going to divide by negative 16, and we'll get t is equal to negative 1 over 8 seconds. All right, so now that we're looking at it, mathematically speaking, this trinomial here, it will be true if we set t to negative 1 over 8. It'll also be true if we set t to 2.5. Now, in the context of the question, which answer makes sense? Right? Can we have a negative seconds for time? No, we cannot. Right? Because he throws it at time equals 0. It flies through the air, time passes, and it hits the floor. So our time has to be positive, meaning that t equals 2.5 seconds is the only rational answer. So we're going to say 2.5 seconds as our answer there.